Welcome back to Elite Dangerous, everybody. I am Commander RestlessCorpse, and today I'm going to talk about the one and only time my dad ever hit me. So my dad was more of like, I guess you could say he was more of like my best friend than my father. I mean, he still like laid down the law and whatnot. I was grounded a lot when I was a teenager. Which was funny because every time he would ground me, I would be like, whatever, and I'd sit in my room and play video games all day until he finally got wise of that and started actually grounding me and taking away my video games, which was pretty devastating. But even then, it wasn't that bad because I used to read a lot. I read a lot of the Dragonlance series and the Forgotten Realms and all stuff like that. So anytime he would anytime he would ground me, for some reason I was going to say grind. Anytime he would ground me and take away my video games, that's when I get a lot of my reading done. And I read a ridiculous amount when I was in high school. But my father and I used to do a lot of stuff together. Like he was a big influence on like the kind of music that I listened to, because he was into all the, a lot of cool shit, which since then my musical preference has changed. Like I'm more into the electronic stuff now, but back in the day I was into metal. I didn't like a lot of the alternative, but I liked a lot of like the heavier alternative. Like I still to this day absolutely love Deftones. I think the Deftones are great. I don't listen to them a lot anymore, basically because when I listen to music now, it's always on YouTube. I have a ridiculous amount of YouTube music playlists that I listen to. If any of you guys, which I'm going to assume that none of you have, but if any of you guys ever watched any of my Twitch streams back when I was into streaming on Twitch, I always used to use my YouTube playlist for the soundtracks and whatnot. But my dad used to take me to a lot of concerts when I was a kid. I saw my very first concert was when I was, I think, 13. We went and saw Metallica, which I used to be really into, but I don't like anything after Master of Puppets. And we're not going to get into that, but I think that Master of Puppets was the last, and Justice for All. And Justice for All was the last good Metallica album. But that's beyond the scope of this conversation. We used to go to a lot of concerts. I saw Metallica, I saw Rush, I saw Typo Negative, I saw Pantera, a whole bunch. And these were all with my dad. I mean, I went to a lot of concerts by myself as well. As a matter of fact, the first concert I ever went to where I was down in the mosh pit was when I was 15, and it was Rage Against the Machine. I went there with a friend of mine, and I had a lot of fun there. I actually got kicked in the back of the head by a crowd surfer, and at the time I thought that was such a cool thing. I was like, yeah, I went to a mosh pit and I got, kicked, and it was great. But this story is about the first and only time my dad ever actually hit me. And it was, he had bought tickets to our third Rush concert together. He absolutely loved Rush. And it's funny about Rush is I hated Rush for a really long time because my dad would always listen to it, and I just did not like Geddy Lee's voice. I thought it was super annoying, high-pitched, and their lyrics were like, I was a kid, and their lyrics were too smart, and they weren't enough like death and destruction, and I just didn't like them. And also I'm not even fucking tapped into the game. I don't know why I've just been sitting here. As you can see, I've been sitting here in fucking Super Cruise for a long time. But one day, after telling my dad that I thought Rush was stupid, he made me listen to every single CD that Rush had at the time. And at the time, they had like 19, right? So we spent all day listening to Rush. And at first I was all mad at him, and I thought it was stupid, and I just wanted to listen like Joe Satriani and Pantera and stuff like that. But it eventually started to grow on me. Like I started actually listening to the lyrics and the music itself, and kind of realized the genius that Rush had. Now, many of you may be younger than me. I know that some of you are older than me, or actually my age, and you might understand, but Rush, well, it looks like we're going to have to take care of that guy. Rush is one of those old bands. They've been around for fucking ever. They've been around longer than I've been alive. And they've put out a lot of good stuff. And as musicians, they are amazing. Like Neil Peart was one of my favorite dudes for a really long time because when I was in high school, I was a drummer. So it was our third Rush concert, and it was all the way up. Now, this is back when I lived in Houston, Texas. And the concert was all the way up in Lake Conroe, which is in the northern part of Texas, and Houston is down in the like southern part along the coast. So it was like a 3-hour drive to get to this place. Well, I knew a girl that lived in Lake Conroe, or lived in Conroe anyway. It wasn't near the lake. And we had made plans to meet up before the concert. Like my dad, the venue was right next to a mall, and she and I were going to meet at this mall. What? Oh. She and I were going to meet at this mall, and I was going to hang out with her for an hour or two. My dad was going to just kind of wander around the venue. It was an outside venue. And then I was going to, he handed me my ticket and everything, and I was going to meet him up. He put a lot of trust in me, which is weird. I was 17 at the time, and I was a good kid. Like, I didn't drink or smoke or do any kinds of drugs when I was a kid at all. And he knew this. We had talked about it a lot. And the reason that I didn't do any kind of drugs or drink or smoke or anything like that is because I saw how it kind of screwed up my family. And that's something that we'll get into maybe at a later date. It's something I've been thinking about talking about for a really long time, but I guess I'm not ready. But he like had complete faith in me that I wasn't going to go do stuff like that. And it was not unfounded. I didn't do that kind of thing. But anyway, I met up with this girl, and we had a lot of fun just hanging out. Like, we jumped in a car, we went around, we met some of her friends, we went to these parks and stuff and just hung out. We were 17, like she was my age or whatever. But I made a crucial mistake in that I decided to go back to her place, and we went back to her place, and we did things that teenage people do, and I decided that because it was getting about that time, well, before going back to her place, it was getting about that time where I needed to say goodbye and meet up with my dad at the venue. But instead, I decided to go with her back to her place, and we went back and, did our thing. But and it turned out to be like too late to go to the concert. Like, they were not going to let me in, I'm sure. So I ended up staying the night with her, unbeknownst to her parents. And, well, I mean, her parents found out later in the night, but it was way too late. But I was stupid. Like, I was an absolute idiot. Because think about how terrified my father must have been, not hearing from me at all. This was back before, like, cell phones were a thing. I obviously couldn't contact him in any way to tell him that I was okay. So just think about how terrified my father must have been, thinking that he lost me at this concert, right? Anything could have happened. Anything, because he didn't know this girl. She could have been a murderer, or it could have been not even a girl at all. He didn't know anything. I mean, I knew her, but he didn't. And the next morning, her parents came in and said that they had called my father and told him that I was okay and told him where I was, and he was on his way to come get me. And I thought nothing of it. I was an idiot. So the we were supposed to meet him in the parking lot of this restaurant. I guess that was the easiest way, because he didn't know where they lived, and it was easier than telling him where they lived, I guess. Just meet us here on this whatever. So we pulled in, and I saw him sitting there in the car that he later gave me when I turned 18, which was this sweet ass like 1988 Mustang. It was yellow and it had black racing stripes. I loved that car for forever. It was a hatchback, and back then I thought that Mustang hatchbacks were fucking amazing looking, and I was a big fan of it. But anyway, So, you know, I said my goodbye to them, and I got into the car, and as soon as I closed the door, he punched me in the jaw. And it absolutely, like, shocked me. It absolutely shocked me, because he had never hit me before. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of put my hand on my jaw. It was bleeding a little bit, because he was not a small guy. Like, he was a biker, you know. He was a big burly dude. And for at least an hour and a half of the drive back, it was absolutely silent. Like, I was holding my jaw, looking out the window, just fucking seething. I was so pissed at him for punching me, because I was a stupid kid and I didn't understand what I had put him through. So eventually he turned down the music, and the only thing he said to me, and it makes me laugh to this day, the only thing he said to me, and I was so pissed off at him, and every time I looked over, I could tell that he was like white knuckle holding the steering wheel, just staring ahead, you know, and he was just so fucking pissed at me, and I was so pissed at him. I was, you know, in that I hate you phase, which is funny because I never really had that phase because he was my best friend, but at that moment I hated him for punching me. And he looked over at me. He turned the music down. He looked over at me and he said, "Did you at least get some pussy?" And I didn't laugh or anything because I was pissed, but I said, "Yeah." And then after that, we were totally cool. Another 15 minutes or so passed, and then we just started talking about shit. Like, we were bullshitting like we always do. And that's the kind of relationship I had with my dad. Like, we were friends. We did lots of stuff together, and it was always cool stuff. It was never like dad stuff where it was like, you know, oh, let's go to a park, or let's go to, you know, the like store or something dumb. It was always cool shit. Like, we went fishing. Even though I kind of hated fishing, I enjoyed fishing with my dad. We went crawfishing and we explored things, and it was so cool when he got his motorcycle. Well, it was a trike. We went, you know, on rides all over the place, and it was really cool. And it's funny that I didn't really turn out a lot like him in that respect, whereas he was absolutely covered in tattoos, and he used to build tattoo guns and trade them to the local shop for tattoos. So he was just absolutely covered in them. And it was cool because the local shop had a whole bunch of his tattoo guns on display, and he was able to sell them to other people based on like the word of mouth from this tattoo. It was really cool. But we did like everything together. We played games together. I remember my one of my most fondest memories with my dad was playing A Link to the Past, and he was watching me play, and you know, I got to the first boss, which was like a giant crab that you had to like hit in the face with a hammer to break his shield off, and then after you do that, you can, you know, stab him a whole bunch of times. My dad thought that was so fucking cool. So anytime I played A Link to the Past, I was like, "Hey man, I'm about to start playing, you want to watch?" And he was like, "Yeah, too cool, let's, you know, we'll hang out." But I always remember this moment to this day as one of the coolest things that my dad had ever done. Even though he punched me in the face, it was the beef that we had created with this like whole incident was instantly washed away with that one question: "Did you at least get some pussy?" Like, he understood, he just didn't like it because of how scared and crazy the situation was. Anyway, I probably have a ridiculous amount of stories that involve my father, and we'll probably be talking about those. But just know that my father did die in 2003, and it was absolutely devastating to me. Mostly because I had already moved out of Texas with a girl, and I was living in Ohio at the time, and it kind of kills me that I wasn't around when he died. And I did go back for the funeral and everything, and the funeral just absolutely upset me. But we'll talk about that in another, maybe tomorrow. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow, because Again, I absolutely loved my father. My father was the greatest guy in the world, and I miss him. Anyway, that is all the time I've got, ladies and gentlemen. So if you like this video, go and hit that like button. If you want to see more videos of Elite Dangerous or any of the other videos that I've done, go and hit that subscribe button. If you have anything to say, throw it down in the comments or hit me up on Twitter. That is @RestlessCorpse. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Eject. 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 Eject.